If you'd just stayed home, maybe you'd have a husband by now. My cousin's fiancé doesn't glare. She smiles too brightly as she says it. But I feel the words land like a sandbag in my gut. I'm Lieutenant Commander Elise Morgan, 34, Navy, 2 combat deployments, classified commendations, and right now, I'm standing in my own brother's plush living room where they've gathered to celebrate an Ivy League reunion. And they've invited me, but only if I came in civilian clothes. I smiled politely and slipped into my uniform. Now I'm standing next to vanilla candles and champagne towers. My service ribbons are as precise as the room's symmetry. My name, I realize, doesn't appear on any guest list or program. I'm a footnote someone forgot to write. They laugh when I walk in. Not eager laughter, not the kind that greets a kissing cousin. Dirt in your eye laughter. Still playing dress up, Elise? Someone says. A girl I babysat for once, now curling her phone in her hand like she's ready to film the awkward moment. I catch the phone lens reflection of my own uniform and feel the sting, like I'm a costume. My mother gets close, pats my shoulder. You look different. The way she says different is like she tapped a delicate vase and expects it to shatter. They gave toast after toast to my brother, how he built his company from 5 employees in a garage, how he's engaged to a lovely girl everyone adores. The phrase, lovely girl, hovers in the air, her gaze flickering over me, like I'm the thing you sweep under the rug because you don't want to stop the rhythm of the party. I want to say, I've carried your children across rivers under fire, but I don't. I nod. I smile. I hold myself still, because what they don't know is this. The uniform isn't plastic or costume. It's a ledger. Written in missions flown, storms navigated, lives saved. They never understood why I handed in my wedding band in 2020. Why my home was on a base in Okinawa instead of a suburb. Why I missed so many birthdays I didn't count. To them, absence is disrespect. To me, it's gravity. Especially gravity that holds when everything else floats away. Their laughter echoes while I tap my coffee cup against a line of untouched hors d'oeuvres. I stare at the gold flecks on the rim. It's beautiful. Dangerous. Pretend it's not sharp. But it's sharp. I look across at my brother, Adam. Tall, corporate grin, perfectly tailored suit. He's the picture they like. He used my stories too. Remember that Monday where he said, "My buddy once had to stitch people in a field under mortar fire." That trip to the Caribbean? Not mine. I once carried a man with 2 fractured legs to the medevac, but I wasn't allowed to tell my own stories, so I became the punchline. That's Elise. I take a breath. Counting. 3,600 miles flown, 28 days on patrol, 12 bodies rated stable by me with a tourniquet made from a radio strap. All names and records locked away behind classification codes and redacted memos. I leave the room. Not because I can't bear it. Because even silence can break you. I walk into the hall. Heavy carpet, gold sconces, and portraits of laughing office parties I'll never belong to. Outside, the night air slaps me awake. I lean against the marble, letting cool light wash over my skin. My phone buzzes. I read the message carefully. Your ceremony is approved. Admiral McLean will pin you the Navy Cross. The world suddenly tilts. Not under my feet, but within them. They laughed at my uniform tonight. They laughed because they didn't know. But the Admiral doesn't bow to family narratives. Not when truth holds a medal. And soon, that medal won't just hang on my chest. It'll hang in a room where the people who laughed didn't realize they'd be forced to stand silent when the truth walked in. So I check my reflection once more. Straighten the ribbons. Breathe in. Not for revenge, just for recognition. For myself. I was never the loud one in the family. That was always Adam. He could fill a room with charm, with that politician's smile and the kind of voice that made people lean forward just to hear their own names echoed back. He was magnetic. I was the shadow. The girl with the compass. The one who memorized emergency protocols instead of prom dresses. I think my parents were relieved when I joined the Navy. Not proud. Relieved. Like I had finally removed myself from the family equation, neatly and voluntarily. No more awkward silences when they bragged about Adam's disruptive tech. No more tension at Thanksgiving when someone asked, "So what exactly do you do out there?" Like I was floating off the coast of something important. Just close enough to wave, but too far to hear. They never said it, but I could feel it in the way their eyes skipped over mine when I walked in uniform into a family photo. "Let's do one without the hat," they'd say, and then one without me. But I stayed silent, even after I returned from that mission off the Somali coast, the one where the helicopter took fire during an evac, and I had to take control after the pilot passed out. We landed bleeding, but alive. No headlines, no ceremony. Just a pat on the back from my commanding officer and a form that said, "Further debriefing classified." I mailed home a postcard. It said, "Still flying." No one replied. I tried to visit that Christmas. Mom said they were keeping it low-key. Turns out Adam had hosted 40 people in the backyard under fairy lights and a catered oyster bar. I saw the photos later on my cousin's Instagram. That's when it started to curdle. Not just the absence, but the erasure. It wasn't that they forgot. It's that they chose to forget. And when you erase someone long enough, you begin to believe they were never important to begin with. So I leaned in harder, into the silence, into the ocean, into service. The deployments didn't feel like exile. They felt like truth. People in the field didn't ask where you came from. They asked, "Can I trust you with my life?" And I could say, every time, without blinking, yes. But even trust wears thin when there's no home to come back to. So I built my own rhythm. Fly, land, save, repeat. Christmas in the Gulf. New Year's on deck. My family sent digital cards, templates with stock snowmen. No names, no photos. And then came last year's mission. The one that changed everything. But I can't talk about that. Not directly. I can only say this. The water was colder than it should have been. The signal was late. The crew was young. And when the lead chopper went down, I didn't hesitate. I broke protocol, diverted course, fought off hypothermia and bureaucracy at the same time. 5 people made it home. 2 of them have kids now. One of them sends me a birthday message every year, even though we've never met in person since. After the mission, I got called in, not to be reprimanded, to be recognized. Navy Cross. That's not handed out lightly. That's not a participation trophy. That's a citation for extreme valor under life-threatening conditions. I called my mother. "Mom, the Navy wants to give me a medal," I said. She paused. "What kind?" "The Navy Cross." Another pause. Then, "Is that like one of the smaller ones?" That's when I knew. No matter what I did, no matter how many people I saved, I would always be the invisible one at the table. Until now. Because this time, the table is mine. The invitation went out last week. Official, embossed. No room for edits. They will attend. Not because they want to, but because they can't afford not to. Because when the Admiral stands to pin that medal, when the cameras flash and the journalists lean in, they'll want to be in the shot. They'll want to say, "That's our Elise." But I've already decided. There won't be a second chair at my podium. There won't be a family table. They gave me silence for a decade. Now I give them distance. I'm not bitter. I'm clear. I was 26 the first time I realized how performative my family's support really was. It was the night of Adam's TED Talk. He had just landed a feature in Forbes, something about a breakthrough algorithm that could disrupt global supply chains, or whatever headline buzzword they were pushing that quarter. He wore the same smirk he always had when he knew the spotlight belonged to him. The crowd loved it. So did my parents. I had flown in for the weekend, used my entire week's leave just to be there. I stood at the back of the venue, wearing my khakis, ribbonless, name tag tucked under my jacket. I clapped when everyone else clapped. I smiled when the cameras panned across the audience, but not once did he mention me. Not my name, not my service, not even the generic, my family. That night at dinner, my mother gushed, "Isn't it amazing what he's built?" I nodded, even as I felt the last part of me hoping for connection quietly fold inwards. I said nothing when she added, "It's so nice to have someone making a difference in the world." That line cut deeper than any mission debrief. I excused myself, stepped out into the parking lot, and just stood there under the flickering orange of the streetlight, listening to the hum of passing cars and wondering why silence always felt louder around people you loved. When I returned to base, my commanding officer asked why I looked like I hadn't slept. I shrugged. "Family leave?" I said. He chuckled. "Rougher than combat?" I didn't laugh. Because it was true. At least in combat, you knew who your allies were. The following year, Adam got engaged. Of course, I wasn't part of the bridal party. They gave me a seat at the third row, behind the college roommates and the yoga instructor. I wore my full Navy service dress, not to make a statement, but because that uniform was the only thing left that still felt like mine. And still, my mother whispered, "Couldn't you have worn something a little softer?" Like I was a mistake in the family portrait. Like my very presence bruised their image. When they stood for photos, I took a step back. No one noticed. No one asked me to step forward. Not even Adam. Especially not Adam. We hadn't been close since we were kids. Back then, we used to build model planes together, sitting on the garage floor for hours, arguing about tail fins and center of gravity. He used to say I had the steadiest hands he'd ever seen, but once I joined the Navy, he stopped looking at me the same way. Maybe because I left, or maybe because I didn't need him to make me visible anymore. Then came the accident. We were stationed on the Horn, routine patrol, nothing flashy, until it wasn't. An engine failure on an inbound cargo carrier, no fuel, no time. The distress signal went up, but the response window was closing. I was on deck when the alert hit. We had under 7 minutes. I didn't wait for the chain of command, I just moved. Radioed control. Adjusted trajectory. Took the bird up myself. Low visibility. Wind shear. Salt fog like curtains slapping the windshield. Every second felt like threading a needle through chaos. But we made it. 3 pulled from the wreckage. 1 with a crushed spine. The others with hypothermia. When we landed, one of the medics stared at me and whispered, "That was impossible." I didn't answer. I was too busy trying not to vomit adrenaline. The incident went into the logbooks. Classified. Again. I went back to my bunk that night and stared at the ceiling, the hum of the air vent syncing with my heartbeat. I didn't tell my family. What was the point? They wouldn't have understood the gravity. They wouldn't have believed it. They would have said, "That's what you signed up for, right?" And maybe they're right. But it was also the moment I stopped trying to be heard. I started keeping a file. Not for the Navy. For me. A quiet folder of every life saved. Every mission flown. Every anonymous thank you whispered between corridors. I didn't need applause. I needed proof that I existed, that I mattered. Even if my own blood never saw it. I used to believe recognition was about trophies, medals, mentions in speeches. But the older I got, the more I understood. Sometimes survival is its own reward. Sometimes dignity is the only thing you can hold when everything else is stripped away. The turning point came not on a battlefield, not in a carrier cockpit, but in a ballroom with marble floors and too many mirrors. It was the Pierce Family Foundation Gala, a black tie event my parents threw every year in Adam's honor. He was their legacy project now. My father had transferred the board chairmanship to him. My mother introduced him to guests with the quiet pride of a queen announcing her heir. I had RSVP'd no, but duty brought me to DC that same weekend, and something in me, some frayed thread of hope or masochism, told me to go. I arrived in uniform. Not for vanity. Not for them. But because I was coming straight from a debrief with Naval intelligence. The moment I walked in, I saw it. Disapproval flashing like a lens flare in my mother's eyes. Her smile tightened. My father's handshake was brief. "We didn't expect you to attend," he muttered. I looked around the room. Everyone was dressed like they belonged in a museum catalog. I stood out like a crease in a silk tablecloth. "Neither did I said. Adam was already on stage. His speech was mid-flow, talking about vision, scalability, giving back. All the buzzwords lined up like ducks. Then he saw me. His gaze faltered. Only for a second. But I caught it. When he finished, applause erupted like a release valve. I clapped too. Quietly. Afterward, we exchanged the kind of hug that makes bystanders think everything's fine. But we both knew it wasn't. "You could have worn something else," he whispered against my ear. I pulled back, eyes steady. "This is something else." He didn't reply. That night, I found my seat tucked behind a marble column, next to a man who thought I was a security officer. I didn't correct him. It was easier than explaining the truth. 3 weeks later, I got the call. A multinational drill. Pacific Waters. Joint Command. High profile. Admiral Reynolds was assembling a special flight squad for live scenario simulation, hostage evac, fog navigation, precision strike. It was the kind of operation that didn't just test skill, it tested soul. I accepted immediately. Training was brutal. Sleep was rationed. Mistakes were magnified. But I thrived. In the air, I didn't have to explain myself. The controls didn't care if your brother gave TED Talks or if your mother liked softer fabrics. Altitude didn't lie. In one of the exercises, I pulled a dive maneuver through a synthetic storm pattern no one had ever attempted live. When I landed, the ground crew didn't speak. They just stared. The data review said it was incomparable precision under non-survivable turbulence. Admiral Reynolds called me into his office the next day. He looked up from a file with my name stamped in bold. "You're not just a pilot," he said. "You're a ghost in the wind." I thought he meant it as a compliment. Then he added, "And ghosts deserve to be seen." That sentence changed everything, not because of what it meant, but because of who said it. Until then, I had never been looked at like that by someone in command, like I wasn't just a number on a roster or a competent cog in a giant military machine, but someone whose existence meant something. Reynolds didn't just see what I did. He saw me. 2 weeks later, I was notified. I was to be formally recognized at the Naval Valor Commendation Ceremony. Full honors. Admiral's citation. Public. For the first time in 14 years, they were going to say my name into a microphone, not buried in a mission log, not scribbled in a casualty prevention report, but out loud, on record. I didn't tell my family. Not yet. I wanted it to be mine. At least for a moment. The night before the ceremony, I ironed my uniform with hands steadier than they've been in years. The ribbons catch the lamplight. The dark navy fabric still smells faintly of sea salt and engine oil. It's not glamorous. It's not soft. But it's mine. Every stitch. Every crease, earned. I lace my boots slowly, one tug at a time, as if tying down my breath. No entourage, no makeup team, no gold watch from a foundation that bears my last name, just me, a mirror, and the hum of a bass that never really sleeps. At 4:30 a.m., I walk the tarmac alone. The ceremony is scheduled for 0700 sharp at the Joint Operations Amphitheater, but I want to see the flight line before then, just to remind myself why I stayed, why I bled, why I disappeared into the fold for so long, and why it's okay if no one claps when my name is called. It's quiet out here. Wind scraping against hangar doors, jet shadows sleeping like giants. And I feel it again. That clarity that only comes when there's no one left to impress. The truth is, I never wore the uniform for admiration. I wore it to survive. But today, survival alone doesn't feel like enough. I check my phone. 27 unread messages. From Adam, from my mother, even from my father. Apparently, word traveled faster than I thought. One of the base PR officers must have leaked the program list to the press. My name, Commander Elise Harper, Distinguished Service Medal, is circulating. And not just in military channels, CNN, Defense Today. Even a few lifestyle blogs with titles like, "Who is the female pilot getting the Admiral's commendation?" Suddenly, I'm a headline. Suddenly, they remember me. Adam's first message says, "I didn't know. No one told us. Can we come?" The second, "It'll mean a lot to Mom and Dad if we can be there." The third, "Don't shut us out." I don't answer any of them. I'm not cruel. I'm just tired of being remembered only when it's convenient. At 6:50, I arrive at the amphitheater's staging area. Reynolds spots me immediately and gives a subtle nod. His uniform is crisp, and his presence stills the space like a magnet rearranging iron dust. He motions for me to follow him backstage. "Room's packed," he says. "Even your parents made it." I don't flinch. Just breathe. "You okay?" he asks. "Do I look okay?" I reply, half a smile curling. He chuckles. "You look like someone about to get pinned by an admiral in front of 300 people." Sounds horrifying. It should be. That's how you know it matters. A few moments later, they call for the lineup. The other honorees and I stand shoulder to shoulder in the wings. Marines, medics, a logistics officer who rerouted an entire supply chain mid-evac. When they call my name, I step forward. The lights don't blind me the way I expected. They warm me, fill the hollow places like sunlight through a cracked church window. Reynolds stands center stage. Medals gleam on his chest, his citation in hand. He begins. "Some serve to be seen. Others serve so the rest of us may never have to be." Then he pauses, looks straight at me, and some do both without asking for thanks. The applause starts softly, then grows, and then I see them. Row 3, center. My mother, mouth slightly parted. My father, unreadable. And Adam, eyes down, as if unsure whether he's allowed to look proud. When Reynolds pins the medal to my chest, it's not the pressure of the clasp I feel. It's the weight of being known, of being impossible to ignore anymore. The applause swells, but I don't cry. I just nod. Just once, because I don't need them to say they were wrong. It's enough that they finally had to sit still long enough to see it. After the ceremony, I don't linger. There's a reception in the adjoining hall, filled with polite champagne and lukewarm speeches, but I slip out the back instead. Still in full uniform. Still with the medal catching stray sunbeams like a secret I'm not sure how to wear. The air outside smells like jet fuel and early spring. I walk toward the old observation deck, where I used to sneak during breaks just to watch the sky change. Where I sat the day I learned I was being reassigned to the Gulf under blackout conditions. Where I folded my transfer orders into my palm like they might disappear if I gripped them hard enough. Where I cried alone more than once. That's where Adam finds me. I hear his footsteps before I see him. Awkward, measured, not the cadence of a man coming to celebrate, more like someone approaching a gravesite. I don't turn around. "You weren't going to tell us?" he says. I let the silence sit. He tries again. "You were just going to show up, get a medal from an admiral, and ghost us?" I look down at the ribbon. It worked out pretty well that way. His breath stumbles. "We didn't know, Elise. That I was in the Navy? That I spent 4 years deployed in zones your friends don't even know how to pronounce? Or that I was alive?" He flinches. "That you were being honored." I finally turn. His face is thinner than I remember. Less arrogant. Or maybe I'm just less willing to flinch around him now. He shrugs. "Mom's upset. Mom's embarrassed." Same thing, isn't it? He tries to laugh at his own joke. I don't give him one back. "I brought shame to the family, remember?" I say. "Left Westvale, skipped law school, traded pearls for patches, walked away from the life they thought they handcrafted for me." "They were scared," he mutters. "No, Adam. They were proud, until my path stopped making them look good." He stares at me, like he's searching for some piece of me that still matches the girl they erased. "You know," I continue, "I deployed 6 times, ran airlift missions in the middle of a cholera outbreak. Watched a guy take shrapnel to the face and still hold the line so the rest of us could get out. And the only letter I ever got from home was a Christmas card, signed only by the dog." "That's not fair." "No," I interrupt. "What wasn't fair was them telling people I'd taken a gap year for reflection while I was treating burn victims with a field kit and a flashlight." He shifts, uncomfortable. "Then why come back?" "Because I earned it," I say quietly. "Because they can't uninvite reality just because it doesn't match the family scrapbook." He nods, slowly. "You want to see them?" "No. They're waiting." "They waited too long." He doesn't argue, doesn't push, just stands there, shoulders slumped beneath his pressed blazer, like a boy caught between 2 camps and too late to help either. "I didn't know you were hurting," he says finally. "You didn't ask." We stand in the silence that always follows truth too long buried. Then I do something I hadn't planned. I take the medal from my chest and press it into his palm. "Give it to Mom," I say. "She always wanted something to brag about." He stares at it like it's radioactive. "I'm not doing this to punish anyone," I add. "I just want peace, and I wanted to earn it on my own terms." Adam nods. "You did." I start walking back toward the gate. He calls after me. "You're still part of the family, Elise." I don't look back. I just raise my hand in a casual salute and say, "Then they can meet me halfway." The flight back is quiet. I don't wear the uniform this time. Just a plain sweater, jeans, and the kind of silence that fits like a second skin after years of living in shadows and orders. The seat beside me is empty. That feels right. I watch the clouds shift below us, layered like memories, some soft, some storm-worn. When the wheels touch down, I don't feel relief. I feel space. There's no one waiting for me at the gate. No welcome home signs, no embrace. But I've long stopped craving things that aren't freely offered. The silence meets me like an old friend. Back in my apartment, I unclip my hair and let it fall. Toss the travel bag in the corner. My cat, Ghost, curls around my leg and meows once, like a question. "I'm still here," I whisper, kneeling to scoop him up. "Still breathing." I open the closet and hang the uniform neatly. The empty space beside it is symbolic, intentional. That's where the grief used to live. The anger, the need to prove something to people who turned away when the lights dimmed. But now it holds air and choice. That night, I make tea and sit by the window, watching traffic below. I scroll past dozens of tagged photos from the ceremony, articles, mentions of my name in military forums, messages from strangers. One catches my eye. I served under her in Kandahar, best CO I ever had. She taught me how to lead without shouting. I don't cry. Not really. But I blink slowly, letting the weight settle. I click on a message from Lieutenant Harlow. She's stationed out in Guam now. Ma'am, I'm building a mentorship program for incoming recruits. Would you be willing to do a guest session over video? They'd never believe it, but they should hear from you. I smile. Small. Private. Tell them I'll log in at 0600. No ribbon. No salute. Just stories. I send it without a second thought. The next day, I walk to the community center 2 blocks down. It's not military funded, but the young veterans who gather there come from every branch, every background. Some are barely 20. Some carry ghosts older than their bodies. None of them laugh at my plain clothes. None of them ask what rank I held. They just listen when I speak. We sit in circles. We talk about what happens after the medals, about navigating families that still see us as misfits, about choosing peace over pride, about what it means to serve something larger than recognition. And when one young woman, barely out of boot camp, asks me how to survive a place that doesn't celebrate her, I tell her what no one told me. You don't wait for the world to notice. You build your world so loud, so good, so rooted, they have no choice but to hear the echo. She nods. And she doesn't cry either, but her eyes shine. Later, as I lock up, a man I've never seen before approaches from the back of the hall, late 60s, steel gray hair, a worn Navy ring on his hand. I saw your ceremony, he says. I brace. Just slightly. He smiles. They say you reminded the Admiral of his first CO. That's no small thing. Wasn't looking to remind anyone of anything, I reply. He nods. Sometimes the echo is enough. He leaves before I can ask his name. I stand there a moment longer, fingers tracing the frame of the door, the metal cool beneath my touch. I exhale. They may have laughed once, but now I speak. And others lean in. The invitation arrives exactly 6 months later. Heavy cream stock, navy blue ink, embossed with gold trim. Formal. It reads, Naval Women's Legacy Gala, honoring distinguished service beyond the uniform at the bottom. Keynote, Commander Elena Grant, Retty. That's me. I hold the card for a long moment. Not out of disbelief, not out of pride. Just stillness. It's the first time my name has ever stood alone on something official, not buried behind someone else's, not lost in a list or an afterthought at the bottom of a program. I iron the uniform slowly that night. 4 stars, clean lines, the scent of pressed wool and discipline. I pack it into a garment bag with reverence. Yes, reverence, even after everything. Because it's not just a symbol of the Navy anymore. It's a symbol of every moment I endured in silence and every word I now choose to speak. The gala is held at a historic theater in Annapolis. Arched ceilings, velvet seats, and chandeliers that reflect 100 years of legacy. My boots tap against the marble floors, measured and steady. My breath doesn't waver. I enter just as the first presenter finishes. There's a soft murmur when I walk in. People recognize the stars. But more than that, they recognize the story now. I nod politely, but I don't stop. I make my way to the front, where the host greets me with the kind of warmth that isn't forced. She doesn't ask about my father, doesn't mention my family. She says, "We're honored you finally said yes." And I say nothing, just smile. When they call my name, I step up to the podium. Not as a daughter, not as someone's sibling, but as the woman who stayed, long after the room forgot her, long after the laughter died, long enough to build something stronger than legacy. Silence greets me at first. Then, slow applause. Not for flash, but for presence. I clear my throat and begin. I was erased from a ceremony once, I say. Not by accident, but by design. A few heads tilt. I showed up in uniform and they pretended I wasn't there. My family, my mentors, my commanding officers. They erased me so thoroughly it took me years to understand I was never invisible. I was inconvenient. Nate, a quiet shiver runs through the audience. But tonight, I continue, I'm not here to talk about medals or missions. I'm here to talk about the people who stay standing when the recognition doesn't come. I talk about the others like me, the overlooked, the scapegoated, the erased. I talk about the woman who stitched a team back together after an ambush, then quietly requested reassignment before her CO could bury her with blame. I talk about the man who trained 10 years of cadets who all outranked him because no one bothered to read the footnote on his medical discharge. I talk about silence as armor, and when to take it off. When I finish, the applause is quiet at first. Then it swells, like it means something. Like the sound knows what it's carrying. As I step down, the Admiral, yes, that Admiral, meets me at the foot of the stairs. He doesn't speak at first. He simply pins a ribbon to my chest. Then he leans in and whispers, "Next time they try to laugh, remind them who taught them how." I laugh. Not bitter, not sharp. Just enough. That night, when I return to my hotel room, I hang the medal beside the uniform. Not as proof, not for pride, but because some legacies deserve a wall of their own. And mine? It was forged in silence, in betrayal, in the cracked concrete between expectations and truth. They laughed at my uniform once, but they don't laugh anymore. They stand. And some, quietly, salute.